There we go. All right, I made a quick slideshow so that my face is not always the first thing you see on these videos. So hopefully that helps organize a bit. So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining the community call. Things we're going to talk about today. So on the agenda, updates to the network, an idea essentially for some validator education. I'll talk a little bit about the thought behind that and hopefully solicit some feedback. And then finally, a topic that is currently in testnet, a feature proposal for the one SOL minimum delegation. The feature proposal is currently happening on chain in testnet, and we are hoping to bring that feature proposal to mainnet. So I want to have a discussion here. I know there's been some talk in a couple different channels, mainly the vote one SOL minimum delegation channel, and just want to have, a more live discussion instead of chat and see what we can come up with. So yeah, validator updates. So the recommended updates have changed, or the recommended versions. 1.10.38 is now recommended for mainnet. 1.11.10 is now recommended for testnet. You should ideally see a reduction in traffic on testnet with 1.11.10. There were some performance issues with the previous version on testnet that were investigated by the engineering team and fixed. So thank you, engineering team, for looking into all that. Also want to say a special thanks to a few different validators that I reached out to and got logs from and got some help in debugging those issues. So thanks everyone out there who helped assist in that debugging effort. Make sure you just sort of monitor your traffic there and check performance after this update, but should help fix those problems. Any question about the updates? Anything people are curious about? Nope. Okay, cool. Okay, so education. I've been talking with Dan and others about this a little bit in the background. One thing we really want to do and really want to focus on at the foundation is making sure the validator community is strong and we have a really good, knowledgeable set of operators going forward. I think we've got a pretty large amount of validators on mainnet right now. And what we really want to focus on the most is quality, making sure that, if there's performance issues, if there's things that need to be investigated, if a restart happens in the unfortunate event of a restart, all of our validators are knowledgeable and able to handle that and responsive. So with that in mind, one thing I'd like to work on is education for the community. And I'm thinking that can come in the form of calls that we do or some sort of educational series. But really want some feedback from you all about what you think is missing, or if you're interested in teaching something, what you want to teach. So does anyone have ideas, thoughts, or things that they're curious about? Nobody.
I've got a question. Have you thought about perhaps changing the delegation criteria to be more performance-based, so people that do want to, improve their validators and their education can be moved up the list quicker?
Yeah, it's definitely something we've thought about a lot internally. The problem and the trickiness with any performance-based criteria is that it's almost always gameable. So as soon as you make a metric, there are ways to potentially game that metric to get further up the list faster. So it's a really tricky thing to do well. But yes, long term, that's something we want to move towards. Nothing happening in the near term, but yeah, in the long term, I think that's something we want to be able to do.
That makes sense. It's also, I think, part of the drive that you're suggesting is to move towards more quality, but we're not, has quality been defined yet? If it, is gameable, like what exactly are we looking for the validators to be doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, what I just want to see is more engagement from the whole community, right? Like I think MB validators and testnet validators is active, but it tends to be a smaller subset of the whole validator community. So anything that we can do to get people more active there, more active creating resources, sharing resources, helping others, I think that would be great for everyone. But you're right, like quality is a bit nebulous until we define metrics.
Yeah, some of the things, we've been thinking about, is like doing some more sort of, I'll say, like active or adversarial, testing work on testnet, to basically like require or force like kind of the whole network to go through, some unexpected circumstances or go through a certain exercise. That's not a simple lift, and just given how lean a lot of our engineering team and the foundation team sort of operates, it's not something that we've really been able to really implement to date. But also to Tim's point, like it's hard to measure quality and it's hard to measure education level. Some of these things, like as a human, you can see based on the level of discussion or questions, you can make a assessment. Okay, is this validator kind of know their stuff, or are they asking beginner level questions? And it's hard to force education and decision making skills onto someone, right? We can say, okay, a validator needs to have some good key practices, right? Oh, you shouldn't use your withdraw key as the same as the identity key, right? On the vote account, you need to have a certain max stake concentration in certain things, or skip rate, etc. But the reality is, like, what happens when your node goes down in the middle of the night, right? What happens if there's some performance issues that pop up again on mainnet? Is the validator and is the community collectively like equipped to act intelligently, or not, right? And to answer that, or like it's almost impossible to put a metric to say yes, everyone is going to know exactly what happens and have their alarms go off in the middle of the night if the validator crashes, or if there's an emergency update on the network or something like that. So like we want to make better resources and help validators. Like I really believe a lot of our lesser experienced validators are interested in performing better. It's just there isn't a great funnel or body of content for someone to say, okay, sure, I can run the command line stuff and here's how I start the validator. But like as a human, okay, what are the other considerations and what are the best practices? Things like that really I think a lot of people who've been around for a while have learned in this kind of trial by fire, and have a lot of knowledge, but it's not easily distributed to the community, and so this is kind of something that we just want to make more accessible to more people.
That's a good idea, Dan. The one thought or the one example that comes to me is that actually tomorrow we're all going to be faced with extreme amounts of UDP traffic on our TPU ports, because there's going to be a whole bunch of NFT folks that are drinking shoeies and going for utes, and it's going to be interesting. And we've already prepared, my validator, that we've already got scripts in place. If we need to throw up tight quality of service rules on that port, we can. Even if it gets to an emergency state where I feel like we need to break the glass and and actually block traffic on the port temporarily. That would only be an emergency, but that's an example, to go to your point, of a skill set that everybody kind of needs to know. You need to know how to manage QoS filters on your firewall. So yeah, good point. We could do more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one thing I'd add anecdotally, kind of go to Dan's point, is that Ella and I a little while back did a KYC check through the delegators. And while we did that, a lot of issues that came up again and again when we talked to these random people that we KYC'd was just a lack of knowledge, but not really a lack of wanting to learn, just more like the resources they didn't find quite as accessible, or they just hadn't taken the time yet, and they just really needed a more kind of polished way of learning those things. So I think education like this can be really beneficial for a lot of people who, maybe haven't quite gotten into the details of the docs yet, or haven't been through a restart, or whatever the case may be. Any other thoughts on educational ideas, things people want to teach?
I would love the idea of, a bi-weekly or weekly call for new validators, because I'm probably 2 months now, and getting all of that initial knowledge, you have to pull it from tons of different sources, but there's like a couple questions that you may not understand, which is like super common knowledge that somebody can answer in an instant, but yeah, it takes you 4 hours. So having someone available for you to talk to would be really nice, because sometimes if you ask a stupid question on Discord, you might get pushback and someone say, go read 10 years worth of history of Discord to answer your question, where calls tend to be more friendly and you can ask, easier questions perhaps. And just having those resources, I think that would actually be pretty awesome.
Yeah. I think that would essentially be the idea behind this education series, right? Like, have some topic that we talk about, whether it be monitoring or restarts or whatever is the topic of the day. And then at the end, have time for Q&A, bring up problems, issues that you're facing, and be able to talk about it as a group. So yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, that sounds good. I'll come up with some ideas, come up with a plan, and then share it out and see what people think. All right, let me go back to the presentation. 1 sec. There we go. Okay, switching gears a little bit, I want to talk about the one SOL minimum delegation feature proposal. A couple bullet points I want to hit. So first of all, the feature proposal is currently happening right now on chain on testnet. This will only affect testnet currently. So please, if you have a testnet validator, look into it and vote for it if you're in favor. We need 67% of SPL tokens that are outstanding to be transferred to a wallet by Monday at this time specifically, in order for the feature to be enabled on chain. Again, the reason for this feature, if you've missed it before, is that at every epoch boundary, rewards need to be calculated, and the total number of stake accounts that are delegated currently is impacting the performance of that rewards calculation. So leaders in the beginning of an epoch are missing slots because of this reward calculation going too long. So anything we can do to help limit that calculation time going forward, limit the growth of the amount of time that calculation takes, the better. Brooks, who I think was on the call before, did some investigation into why we have such a large number of delegation accounts. And when he did the investigation, he saw that 91% of the accounts had less than 1 SOL in it. So if we can require the number of accounts, or the accounts going forward, to have 1 SOL or more, ideally we'd limit some of this growth. So that's the basic idea behind the proposal, is to limit the rate of growth of stake accounts. At the same time that proposal is happening on testnet and then in the future on mainnet, there's also an investigation of long-term, how can we solve this problem so that it doesn't impact epoch boundaries. We could potentially spread that calculation out throughout the epoch. But that's a more longer-term fix. The shorter-term fix that we want to get in as soon as possible is limiting this to only delegations that are 1 SOL or more.
I just want to make a quick clarifying remark. One, I think there's a correction in the chat. It wasn't 91%. It was, sounds like 67%. Brooks had so there were some errors in the original reporting. And the proposal at this time is a delegation amount minimum. It's not actually a stake account balance minimum. So you could, if this proposal passes, you can still create a stake account. with less than 1 sol. You can create a pretty basically as slow as I think the rent exempt balance plus 1 Lamport. But you just wouldn't be able to delegate it. I think there was discussion, and this would be really a separate conversation, but a potential future proposal for a minimum balance for stake accounts themselves. But that's not what we're talking about here. It's just a delegation amount.
Yep. Thank you, Dan. Yeah, so I wanted to open this up and just get other voices in on this discussion. It seemed like there's a lot of chatter in the channel there, the Vote 1 Sol Minimum Delegation Discord channel, but it's mainly among 3 or 4 people. So I just wanted to, first of all, make everyone aware of this feature proposal, and then secondly, open it up for discussion if people have any thoughts. So, any thoughts?
Hey again, Tim, I think you might have undersold the importance of this. This is super important, right? Because what's happening is the number of forks that are getting thrown at the start of each new epoch are taking quite a bit of time for validators to finally, process the forks and get them resolved and get the root advancing into the new epoch. We're talking minutes. It's, I think the last time around it was maybe 1.5 minutes to get that process done. That's not good. This is really important. I think the solution that you've got is a good one. It's a great idea. It may not be the only solution in the end. It might be a part of it. But it's an excellent place to start in my mind. I could actually see this then also driving more of the smaller investors into the stake pools. So it might be good for the stake pools too. I'd be curious to hear from those guys as well. But I like the idea. I do think it's super important that we get this resolved and get it resolved quickly. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that input. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that this isn't the long-term final solution, but this is the solution that we can get on mainnet quickly within a month. And I think anything we can do to help those epoch boundaries be a little bit more performant, the better.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know Labs is working on some different solutions for these calculations, but some of those actually include deferring the payouts for even another epoch. And that also takes some time and discussion to think about that. This feels like something that we can do quickly, like you said, and that will, at least the problem will stop getting worse, right? It can start to get better. So, yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts, questions on that? No. All right, well, we're pretty early on time. Is there anything else anyone wants to raise or ask? All right. Chat seems quiet. Thank you, Dan, for the links. There's a question about when we can see the proposal in mainnet. So the plan from Labs right now is to get the proposal passed on testnet first, do sort of a dry run on testnet, make sure that enabling the feature doesn't have any bugs, everything goes correctly. Once that happens on testnet, we can follow with the mainnet feature proposal. So the testnet vote is set to end this Monday. Hopefully that vote passes. Then as soon as the next epoch on mainnet, we can start the feature proposal. Cool. Did not know that. Thank you, Brooks. So apparently we also need 111 on mainnet. So that is a little bit further out. Cool. All right. Well, sounds like there's no other questions. Thank you, everybody. And please remember to vote on testnet if you got a testnet delegator. All right. See you all next time.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.